This video will focus again on central tendency, but rather than focusing on the mean, as we did in the previous video, we're going to focus on the median and the mode. So the median is the middle value of the data set. If we were to take our observations, the median would be the value that divides our data set into two equal distributions, two equal parts. Now, if we have an odd number of observations in our data set, then the median is simply the middle observation. If there's an even number of observations, it gets a little bit more complicated because we'll have two middle values, but the median will be the average of these two observations. So how do we compute the median? First step is going to be to order the data numerically from smallest to largest, and then to provide some type of an index or ID number or ID value for each one of our respective values, particularly for the data in the middle. In order to find this value for the middle, we can use the following formula: m equals n plus 1 divided by 2, and this is going to give you the location of the median. It won't give you the value for the median, but the location of that particular observation. So let's look at a couple examples here. If we've got 55 observations in a data set, we can use the formula and determine that the 28th observation will be the median, and the value of that observation is what we'll use to describe the central tendency of the data. If we've got 54 observations, a little bit more tricky because we've got two middle values, the 27th and 28th observation, based on our respective formula here of 27.5 being the value. And so the median will be the average of these two observations. So we would then take whatever observation 27 and 28 are, we'd add them together, we'd divide by 2, and we would get the median for that respective data set. So how does this actually work? Let's look at two different subsamples of our abalone ring data, one which has 9 observations, one that has 10 observations. So before we compute the median, the first thing we need to do is rank order our data sets, organizing them from smallest to largest, so we can go ahead and do so. In Excel, you can use the data sort application in which to do this rather than doing it by hand. So after we've done this, we can provide some index values for each one of our observations to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. This isn't necessary, but it'll save you counting the values. Next, we're going to use the following formula that we're now familiar with to calculate our median, and this is going to give us the observation number, not the median itself. So for our first subsample, we've got 9 different observations, so we put that into our respective formula. So the median is going to be the value of the 5th observation. So in this particular case, that number is 9. So our median value for our first subsample is 9. Now, for our second subsample, again, a little bit more challenging because we have an even number of observations, and our median is going to be our 5.5th observation. So our value between observation 5 and observation 6. So we need to take the average value of these two observations. We're now comfortable taking the average. So what we find is that the median is 9.5 rings in this particular instance. So close to the first, but slightly different. We're not going to spend a lot of time computing the median in this particular video. We'll do some in class, but this is something that you're probably familiar with based on your math prerequisites. And also I would encourage you to go through practice exercises 4.1 and 4.2 and check out section 4.2.3 of the text. Now, the median has some advantages over the mean. If we go back and think about our example at the end of the last video, we know that outliers can play a major role in shaping the mean. Just one observation can completely change what our measure of central tendency is if we're using the mean. However, for the median, if we were to determine central tendency using this, we would find that despite the fact that we have an outlier in our first sample Y, our central tendency would be the same, 5.5. So the median has an advantage over the mean in the fact that if there are outliers in our particular data set, the median might be more appropriate in determining the central tendency rather than the mean. But we do have some advantages of the mean. Oftentimes it uses all the data and it's more stable if we have repeated sampling. So oftentimes this is preferred, and it's also more easily transformed in the event that our data don't meet the assumptions of our statistical tests. We'll talk about that down the road in our course, but this is something important to consider. The median, however, is very valuable if we've got outliers that are affecting our mean. Also, this can be used for ordinal variables. The mean is only used for continuous numerical variables, so this is another advantage to the median. Our third measure of central tendency is the mode. This is the value that's occurring most frequently in our data set. If we think about mode of operations, this is what we do most often. So, when we talked about histograms, we discussed modality briefly. This relates to the mode of our particular data set. Some distributions, some data sets have one single mode, they're unimodal, but others have multiple modes. And the way to identify the number of modes in a particular data set can be to plot it using a histogram and finding the number of peaks. And we can also do so using a frequency distribution table, which we'll do in a minute. Modes are typically best used when there's only one most frequently occurring value. If there's more than one mode, either the median or the mean is probably going to be a better means of describing central tendency for a particular data set. So, understanding the pros and cons and the uses of these different measures of central tendency are going to be important. The mean is great when we've got a relatively symmetrical data set that are no outliers and it's a numerical continuous data set. Medians are useful when the data is skewed or we have outliers, and mode is most important when we've got categorical data, when there's one measure of this particular central tendency. So we've got a table here that can give you a bit of guidance, but again, there are caveats to each one of these measures of central tendency, and this is just brief, broad guidelines. For this particular course, we're going to assume that our numerical data are not skewed unless told otherwise, and so we'll be using the mean in which to measure central tendency in most circumstances. But you should feel comfortable measuring both the mode, the median, and the mean for any particular data set. Now, how do these three measures of central tendency relate to each other based on the shape of our distribution? So here we've got a histogram of length, and each of these lines indicates a different measure of central tendency, showing that each of these is slightly different from one another. Now, we can make a prediction as far as which measure of central tendency is larger or smaller than each other based on the shape of the skewness, whether it's right skewed, left skewed, or symmetrical. In this particular case, this data set is right skewed. Our tail trails off to the right, and we have a general rule of thumb that for a skewed data set, as you move up the more gradual slope, which in this case is on the right side of the histogram, we then encounter the measure of central tendency that occurs first when we're thinking about things alphabetically. So mean, MEA, compared to median, MED, compared to mode, MO. So ideally, our data set will be bell-shaped, it'll be unimodal, and it'll be symmetric. In this particular case, all the measures of central tendency will be the same. But this is relatively rare in most cases. So depending on if our data is skewed to the right or skewed to the left, it's going to influence whether our mean is greater than our median in our mode, or vice versa. So understanding how to determine whether the mean, median, and mode are greater or less than each other is going to be of value moving forward when we're looking at the shape of a histogram. For more information on this, I'd suggest checking out section 4.2.6 in your text. Now we're going to go through class, part of which we'll spend calculating these measures of central tendency. But for some practice, take a moment, pause the video, and work on calculating the mean, the median, and the mode of the following data set. Okay, so we've got two formulas here that are going to be useful for us. The one on the left here is for calculating the mean of our sample. The one on the right is to calculate the median. So, first step for calculating the median and the mode are going to be to rank order our data and to provide some type of index value. We don't need to do so for the mean, but it can be helpful to do so as well. First, let's calculate that value. In order to do so, we need to take the summation of our observations. So we take the summation of x, and then we divide it by the total number of observations. In this particular case, we've got 19. So our mean in this particular case is 18. To calculate the median, we take our total number of observations and put that in for n. In this particular case, our median observation will be the 10th observation, and the value of that 10th observation is 18. Again, the median is not the observation number, but the value of that particular observation. So the median and the mean in this particular data set are the same. Now for the mode, it'll be advantageous for us to create a frequency distribution table. So that way we can understand how often particular values are occurring within our respective data set. And the mode will be the value of our data that are occurring most frequently. In this particular case, we got 4 observations that are occurring 3 different times. So we actually have 4 different modes in our respective data set. So while the mode is useful in some circumstances, for this particular data set, the mean and the median are going to be more valuable in describing central tendency than the mode will be. For more practice calculating the mean, median, and mode, I'd encourage you to go to practice exercises 4.1 and 4.2 and to check your answers to make sure that you are on track. So this is the end of our lectures on central tendency. So you should be able to define what central tendency is, and you should be able to calculate the mean, the weighted mean, the median, and the mode for both raw data as well as based on a frequency distribution table. We are going to practice this in class, but this is something you want to practice on your own as well. You should know what the difference is between these different measures of central tendency, their pros, their cons, when to use them, and also which are going to be larger than the others based on the shape of a histogram, whether it's skewed to the left, skewed to the right, or whether it is bell-shaped and symmetric. The next set of videos will focus on dispersion, another set of descriptive statistics.